Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another book versus episode video. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at My Hairiest Adventure, book versus episode. Now, the book I gave a 2.9 out of 5 stars. It's a D minus for me. It's slightly bad, but there's a lot of redeemable aspects in terms of writing in the book that I think really do save it. And in terms of its theme, for it being a puberty allegory story in either version, this was pretty solid given the parameters, but it has a lot of problems. The episode, I gave a 1 out of 5 stars. I think this is one of the worst things to ever come out of Goosebumps. So off the bat, it's very obvious of which one I think is better. Obvious. But I'm going to do this because of principle and also because I want to just showcase the idea behind this. I want to just run over some things that I go over in each book versus episode video to kind of compare and see which one did it better. There might be some surprises here with the episode. You'll have to see. But yeah, this is what I do in these videos nonetheless. What I like to run down basically is the criteria. We have characters, which one did it better. We run down the whole cast. We look at the atmosphere, which one had a better atmosphere. Sometimes we get into aesthetics, like something like tone or maybe a mechanic in the story that's really changed. It's not so much here, so we're not going to cover aesthetics at all. Then we're going to look at overall plot, which one had a better plot. We can look at climax, which one had a better climax. And then, of course, the ending, which one had a better ending. So, with that out the way, let's get into it. So, we have some characters to go over here. Let's start off with the main character, Larry. Now, Larry, in the episode, I'm going to start off with the episode. Larry has to be one of the most annoying characters in the history of Goosebumps, at least his episode counterpart. I don't know if it's the acting. I don't know if it's the poor editing with the ADR. I don't know if it's just how he's written, but I hate Larry in the episode. He's not that relatable, and all the relatable aspects that you do find within him in his in the book about insecurities and going through, what Stein is writing a metaphor for as puberty, it's not as memorable as Larry is in the book. So automatically, the win goes to Larry here. I think Larry's monologue in the book is super rich. He's written relatably. He has good friends. He has some legitimate insecurities that play from the beginning of the story up until these events start happening to him. And it's just the way he's written and the way he talks to the reader through his monologue is super relatable. And he's really likable. So, yeah, no brainer there. Let's go into Lily. Now, Lily in either version, she's the two-colored-eyed kid. She's the girl with the gold coin. She's like Larry's best friend. She's serviceable in the episode, but her acting is atrocious, and she's kind of written down out of some scenes as she's in the book. But at least there is a compensation scene in the episode where she gets to go to dinner with Larry. But then again, we don't really get to see much of her character. She's just kind of there in the story. As in the episode, not the episode, but as in the book, she's a bit more of a rock for Larry. And there's much more emotional impact when she's kind of taken out of the story. So because of that, I'm going to give Lily the edge in the book. Now we're going to look at characters Christina, Jared, and Manny. We'll start off with Manny. Manny's in both versions here, but I feel like he just exists in the episode. In the episode, he's the one that discovers the Instatan, not Larry, and he's kind of the instigator. So Manny's not as likable as he is in the book. But then again, he's pretty much in and out of this episode outside that one scene. So there's not a lot here with Manny. As in the book, we get that whole opening section with him at least in it. And we get some weight through Larry's monologue about how much Manny means to him. Manny and Lily are obviously his closest friends and not as annoying as other people like Christina and Jared. So for Manny, I'll give it to the book as well. Jared is mildly charming in the episode due to his acting, but he's really annoying. And like I said, we only see him in that opening scene, really. He's not really in the episode outside of that. As in the book, he is there, but he's mostly with Christina, and he's mostly fine, and he's not as annoying. So I'll probably give Jared to the book. And Christina, she's cut out of the episode, so by default, she goes to the book. But Christina was another character like Jared. She was kind of there in the book, but she did have some play in the story, I should say. So there you go. Let's go to the parents of Larry. Larry's parents, kind of serviceable in either version. I think they're more dismissive in the episode because the plot kind of requires it due to pace. As in the book, they're not quite dismissive. They just don't hear what he's saying because of some weird circumstantial things, like mom's on the phone, or they weren't paying attention all that much when Larry was trying to talk with them. So maybe they are dismissive in that, kind of depressing kind of way. But I do think the parents in the book are still involved with Larry enough, and while there is a mild mechanism change with them by the end, not in terms of how they operate, but in terms of a mild tweak with Larry in the relationship by the end of the story, I think I still prefer Larry's parents in the book. So there you go. Now the doctor character, I forget his last name, but he's the doctor that administers Larry shots. He's basically in the book and episode for the same amount of screen time. However, there's more suspicion on the doctor in the episode, and I rarely like it for that. So for the doctor, I'm going to give the edge to the episode. That's one win to the episode there. Not quite all the way what I wanted to see. I wanted to see way more stuff with the doctor, but at least there's some suspicion there that I was hoping to get out of the book that just wasn't there. So yeah, doctor wins here. I think the character Howie and his bandmates are cut out of the story from the book to the episode, so they automatically go to the book. Not really missing much there, but they play a huge role in the climax of the story, which is a band competition that's also missing in the episode, and we'll get to that in the climax and plot differences. But yeah, that's kind of worth mentioning too. And yeah, so that pretty much wraps up the characters that you really need to know. For the most part, the book wins handily, minus the doctor. So there's that. Now we have the atmosphere. The atmosphere of the episode is set in the summertime. It's in a generic neighborhood. Mostly fine. Kind of just stock for Goosebumps. As in the book, it's a winter-themed story, and there's a lot of good Prowse writing, and there's good description, and you feel more of the area that they live in than you do in the episode. Atmosphere, I guess I'm going to give it to the book. They just were able to do it better there. And often than not, that's the case with the book. Stein's writing is sometimes better than the budget of the show. And that's just how it is. So there you go. Atmosphere easily goes to the book. Now, in terms of plot, the plot is definitely truncated in the episode. And there are some changes here. The general gist of the story is that Larry starts off kind of explaining this phenomenon that these dogs chase him. He ends up avoiding the dogs. He ends up at band practice. At band practice, or around the time of that band practice that happens early on in the story, they come across Insta-Tan, whether it's Manny finding it in the episode or actually Larry himself finding it in the book. All the kids peer pressure each other to put it on. And then after they put it on, Larry has this weird, passing out fit. He gets injected with a doctor, visit at his house, and after that, he starts sprouting hair all over his body. So basically, that's the plot of the story. Now, the episode definitely truncates it by cutting out all the filler that the book had, like the endless scenes at the school, like getting in front of the classroom, going to the gymnasium, discovering more hair, having to constantly remove it. Cuts all that out. It actually cuts out this big part of the book, which is a Battle of the Bands competition that's introduced early on as a Chekhov's gun, that it's alluded to obviously be the climax point of the story. As in the episode, they briefly mention some type of scout coming to look at their band to maybe try them out for something that they're all supposed to make, and they never make the competition tryout, I guess. So that's it. That's like the big change here. There's also some things that happen in the plot that don't happen in the book. Like there's a whole dinner scene with Lily that was not in the book, but they did this to kind of mediate another step of Larry's hair evolution to expedite the plot. So basically what this comes down to is pacing, right? They're trying to pace this better. than the book. And if we're talking pacing, definitely the episode wins. So I'll go ahead and throw pace into the ring here before we give the overall win for the plot. If I had to pick a pace winner, it would be the episode. But overall plot, even though the book meanders, I do think there's a lot more to the book as it plays, like I said, more into the character stuff, more into the monologue. Yeah, the story could be meandering and not as linear as the episode, but I do think that the book kind of offers more because all they're really doing here in either version is just shoving puberty in your face, while the book can be more subtle than how overt the episode can be. I still think it's both pretty obvious here. And I think there's more of a clear message and relatability in the book in that regard. So in terms of plot, I'm going to give it to the book. Even though by the time you get near the climax and the ending, there are pretty stark differences here. Yeah. And not to mention, there is an extra character like Jared. Because they cut out Christina, they made Jared, turn into a dog potentially, like some other characters in the book, in the episode here. So that kind of plays into it, but that's here or there. I still give it to the book. Now, in terms of climax, the climax is a doozy for the episode, I feel. To even say this episode has a climax is kind of insulting, but it basically comes down to Larry uncovers some information about Lily. He goes to his parents to confront them about what happened. They seem to dismiss him. He runs off. He finds the abandoned house where they do practice. He's looking for his friend Jared. He thinks that he might have turned into something like a dog. The talent scout's there. They notice that he's sprouting hair on his arms. He freaks out, runs back to his house, and then it abruptly cuts to the ending. As in the book, the climax is essentially once Larry uncovers what happens to Lily, it's a similar interaction, but he still has to, handle what his situation is providing him so he can go to the Battle of the Bands competition and show up this rival band that's led by this guy named Howie. And there's a whole event that happens there in front of the whole student body, which, leads as a segue point to the ending. There's just more climax to the book, even though, like I said, it's a Chekhov's gun and very predictable. At least it has that. The episode doesn't really have one. So in terms of that, I'm going to give it to the book. Now, in terms of endings, they're basically the same shot-for-shot ending. It's the same thing. So they're kind of tied here. The ending implies after Larry comes home for the final time with all this hair, it's recontextualized in this big moment to mean something. And it takes away from all the other events in the story and solidifies one thing. And Larry kind of shows the reader in the future what his life is like now and what he's experiencing. And then we get a reveal about a certain character that you probably didn't put a lot of thought into in the book. And I didn't bring them up in characters because they aren't really a character, but they might matter to something in the end in terms of the twist itself. So they're basically the same thing, so I'm going to tie them here. But if I had to go on execution of it, I think it's less jarring in the book because there's some explanation before we get to the ending from a certain party. As in the episode, you don't really get that. So if I had to pick for in terms of execution, it goes to the book, but wholesale, they're tied. So that leaves me here with declaring which one is better. Okay, I'm going to put this up front. The only thing the episode I think does better, realistically, is maybe putting a little more suspicion onto the doctor and in turn making the doctor more interesting, which I like better in the episode, technically. And I think that it's paced better than the book. It's a lot easier, I guess, to digest the episode in terms of like how it's progressing its story than the book. The book does meander. So those are two big strengths it has. I want to say big strengths, but definite strengths, I think, over the book. But wholesale, this is an obvious runaway here by like a whole head of hair. I think the book is leaps and bounds just superior when we're talking about characters, the atmosphere, the overall plot, and how that hits for the story. For it being a puberty allegory, it's more subtle in the book, but it has a more thematic punch to it. The episode is very overt in that forced kind of way, and it makes it kind of uncomfortable. And I can totally see why when people talk about controversial Goosebumps, they often bring up the book and episode from My Hairiest Adventure, but I would dare argue that the episode, I think, is more overt about it and more uncomfortable than the book. I guess the book can be more unsettling too, if we're talking about like scares and how it's describing these events that are happening to Larry. If we're going to get into that, maybe you can go into that unnecessary territory. But even then, I think the book is more able to come off as scary than the episode ever is. So, yeah, then it lacks a climax even. So, it's easy to see that the book is superior, in my opinion. When it comes down to these, the book handily wins. Like I said, by a full head of hair. It's not even close. This episode should never have happened the way it did. No offense to Michael Short, who wrote the episode, and David Wary Smith, who directed it, but they should have just looked at some other episodes that were completely kind of like redone instead of refitted. Like, this is the common thing I see with season 1 episodes particularly. They weren't quite comfortable with the changes they could make in source material, so they often change stuff to fit budget more so than change stuff to fit thematically and story-wise. They weren't really doing that yet in the show. And this is a good learning curve episode, I guess, for the whole show as a whole, even though this does show a lot of ailments that many episodes that are single length like this one would have. It's a travesty. Hindsight issues aside, as is, it sucked. Flat out. With the hindsight issues in mind, they could have just completely threw away the book, done something completely different, and possibly made it more fun. But it's a train wreck on every technical conceivable level. It's awful. So there you go. But that's just my thoughts, right? I know My Hairiest Adventure is divisive either way you go. There's some people that really think that this episode's so bad it's good. There's people that think that this book is genuinely good and one of the better Goosebumps books. I totally get it. I mean, Goosebumps is kind of like a ice cream parlor with all these different flavors. You can like Rocky Road but hate mint chocolate, and somebody else can like mint chocolate but hate Rocky Road. You know what I mean? It's one of those type of things. It is what it is. But above all else, Goosebumps is a franchise with a book series and a TV show, even films. When we're doing these, I always stress, go read the book and then go watch the episode. I think if you read My Hairiest Adventure, if you're going to read it at any point of your reading experience, save this one for near the end. Especially if you're doing an OG62 binge, or maybe you're trying to read every Goosebumps book. Really do save this one, at least until you get over halfway through all the books wholesale. You'll probably appreciate this one more than if you would early on. As for the episode, I don't recommend that you ever really need to watch this, but if you have the morbid curiosity and some time to waste, this might do it for you if you're looking for like bad media to ingest. Like, this is a good example of that. But don't waste your time if you don't have to. But if you want to watch it right after the book, go ahead. You can probably see some things that you could have liked more, or possibly even do like more than the book. That could be there, and that's totally fine too. But yeah, that's my thoughts in my video on this. Let me know down in the comment section if you've experienced either version of My Hairiest Adventure. Which one do you prefer more? Do you love the book more? Do you love the episode more? Do you think they're tied? Do you not like either of them? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.